Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 2 waiver wire ads at the wide receiver and tight end position. Inside today's video, I'm going to be talking about a couple of wide receivers as well as tight ends that I believe that you guys should be adding to your roster based upon their performance in week number 1 of the 2021 fantasy football season. But before we get on into the video, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, me and the guys at the Awesemo Fantasy Football YouTube channel put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask that if you guys have a Twitter and would like to follow me, you can follow me on there at NotoriousFNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The first wide receiver I want to be talking about here to add off the waiver wires, Nelson Agholor of the New England Patriots, going up against the New York Football Jets this week in the Meadowlands. Now, Nelson Agholor is probably, in my opinion, going into the season at least, was the second best option in New England. It seemed like Cam Newton and Jacoby Myers really had that excellent connection in preseason. And then obviously Cam Newton gets released. Mac Jones becomes the starter, and I was still pretty sure that, hey, Jacoby Myers is going to be the guy over Nelson Agholor. Now, when all things are said and done at the end of the season, maybe that take was correct, but in week number 1, up against the Miami Dolphins, Nelson Agholor had the much better game. Against a stout Miami Dolphins defense, Nelson Agholor had 5 receptions on 7 targets with 72 yards and 1 total touchdown in the game, acquiring 18.2 PPR points, 15.7 half PPR points, and 13.2 standard points in that game, making him a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy football on the week in all formats. Nelson Agholor had a very good game, and like I said, this was a tough defense to face in Miami. This is the first ever game of Mac Jones' NFL career, so I personally expected that we were going to see some jitters. We were going to see some nervousness come out of Mac Jones, and to be honest, as someone who watched a lot of this game as a Miami Dolphins fan, I didn't see much out of that with Mac Jones. I didn't see him looking very nervous. He seemed like he's been there before. And it seemed like Nelson Agholor had no problem catching the balls a million times from Mr. Mac Jones. Now, Nelson Agholor in the past was basically just considered a bust before you even drafted him in fantasy football. You made the pick and people laugh at you. Even that one guy in Philadelphia made the joke about how there was a baby that had to be dropped out of the window, and the guy caught the baby, saved the kid's life because the building was burning. And he was like, you want to know who couldn't have done that? Nelson Agholor. You want to know why? Because Nelson Agholor stunk in Philadelphia, but he had kind of a reinvigoration of his career. He became much better last year in Las Vegas. And I believe that in 2021, Nelson Agholor is in the perfect situation to succeed for the New England Patriots, even if they aren't some ultra pass heavy team. Next up, we have someone who's actually on the Las Vegas Raiders, Bryan Edwards of the Las Vegas Raiders, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers this week in Pittsburgh. In week number 1 versus the Baltimore Ravens, he had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 81 yards and basically a touchdown. He basically scored that touchdown. He was a millimeter away from getting into the end zone, but for some reason, they just didn't call it. Now, I don't have the best eyes in the world, so maybe he wasn't technically in, but it seemed like they put him on the centimeter line, like 1 centimeter away from scoring. That game was absolutely crazy last night. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys thought about the Baltimore Ravens versus the Raiders game. That was such a crazy game. That was a typical Ravens choke, typical Raiders choke. Then, you know, the Ravens choked and the Raiders won. It was like a back and forth choking affair. It was crazy, but Bryan Edwards looked terrible in that game. So bad. And then at the end, everything clicked. It seemed like everything just occurred. It all hit him at once, and he realized, you know what? I need to catch the ball. And Derek Carr was just feeding this guy. And all offseason, they're talking about it. This guy is Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens combined. That this guy is basically the next great NFL wide receiver. And while I like this situation, I was like, you know, maybe we need to pull back on that statement, right? Maybe Bryan Edwards isn't the second coming of Terrell Owens and Jerry Rice and Calvin Johnson all together, right? But he ended up looking pretty solid in this game, so I think he's worth definitely a pickup this week. 12.1 PPR points, 10.1 half PPR points, and and 8.1 standard points. There's a pretty solid chance that he becomes the #1 wideout in Las Vegas. But before we get on into the next wide receiver to add to your roster, I'd like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Yahoo. Start the NFL season off right with Yahoo Daily Fantasy. To celebrate, we have a brand new exclusive deal launching today thanks to our partnership with Yahoo. If you are new to Yahoo and make your first deposit via the link in the pinned comment or in the show description, you'll get 2 free months of the Awesemo Plus Platinum package for signing up and making your first deposit on Yahoo. Just make sure to sign up through the link provided, which is awesemo.com/yahoo-fantasy-promo. Just to emphasize, this offer is for brand new Yahoo users only. If you're already a Yahoo user, then you will not be eligible for this promo, and you must use the link in the pinned part of the YouTube comment or inside of the description to sign up. With your 2 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum, you'll have access to all of our tools and projections specifically designed for the Yahoo DFS to help you take down Yahoo's $200,000 NFL single game baller contest and all of the other contests that Yahoo has to offer. So take advantage and join Yahoo today. Again, link down below in the description, potentially as well as in the pinned comment. So let's get back on into it. Next wide receiver here is a wide receiver that personally I didn't see having all that great of a season. He was a guy that I talked about as a potential sleeper, but I didn't think that he would out-target the main guy on the team. That is Sterling Shepard of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Washington football team this Thursday in what will be a doozy of a game. Week 1 versus the Denver Broncos. Sterling Shepard had 7 receptions on 9 targets for 113 receiving yards and 1 total tug, acquiring 24.3 PPR points, 20.8 half PPR points, and 17.3 standard points. This guy was basically a top 12 wide receiver in all formats, going up against a tough Denver Broncos defense. Why was that? It's because Kenny Golladay was basically just taking a fucking nap on the sideline for some reason. He was playing in the game. He just wasn't getting the ball. He played all right. He's a guy I'm fine starting this week, but man, oh man, it seems like Sterling Shepard and Danny Dimes, that connection that they have gotten over the last couple of years is really starting to show here. And while he's not the most flashy wide receiver on the field, in fantasy football, a lot of the time you're chasing volume, and he had 7 receptions on 9 targets. He had 9 targets in that game. Wouldn't be surprised if he was averaging anywhere from 8 to 10 targets at this point on the season, unless Kenny Golladay really takes a stranglehold of that #1 wide receiver spot. So I like Sterling Shepard a decent amount this week up against Washington. A little bit nervous, but hey, at the end of the day, he's definitely worth a fine ad because he did good up against the Denver defense that I thought would be basically able to clamp him as well as Kenny Golladay down. Next up, we have Zach Pascal of the Indianapolis Colts going up against the LA Rams. Week 1 versus Seattle, Zach Pascal had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 43 receiving yards and 2 total touchdowns on the game, acquiring 20.3 PPR points, 18.3 half PPR points, and 16.3 standard points per game, or standard points in that game. So if you guys watch the live stream, the live before the lock, the start sit questionnaire that me and Aton were doing on Sunday, he asked me, "Hey Nick, do you like Michael Pittman this week?" And I said no. He said, "Then who do you like?" And I said, Zach Pascal. Go back, run the tapes. Maybe I said Paris Campbell, actually. Thinking back, maybe I said Paris Campbell, but Zach Pascal seems like he's that guy there. Now, if you run back the tape, maybe I did say Zach Pascal. That's what my memory thought. But then again, maybe I just forged that into my brain. So if you go back and watch that, let me know what I said. You probably don't give a fuck, right? Because that's last week. We're talking about this week. Zach Pascal could be the wide receiver 1 in Indianapolis. He has shown off a bunch of talent throughout his career. Now, he's never really flashed. He's never really had that big game. But I believe that here in Indianapolis, with Carson Wentz, without T.Y. Hilton for at least a couple of weeks, it seems like Zach Pascal is in the perfect situation to succeed. Against Seattle, he had 20.3 PPR points, 18.3 half PPR points, and 16.3 standard points. So Zach Pascal isn't in a perfect matchup this week up against the Rams. That's definitely not some cupcake matchup, but at the end of the day, I think Zach Pascal will be able to get it done up against the LA Rams. And if he continues on this trend of being the #1 wide receiver for Carson Wentz, then picking him up right now will have came at an extreme value, because say no one picks him up in your league and you wait till next, because Zach Pascal isn't necessarily this huge name. So say you wait, then next week, more people are going to be all in on him, more likely to spend a lot of their fab on him, especially if he has a big game up against the LA Rams. Next up, we have Tim Patrick of the Denver Broncos going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville, with Jerry Jeudy missing some serious time. Serious time. Now, their projection was not very long, right? It's like 6 to 8 weeks is what they're saying. And then basically everything that I looked at, that is very short for the injury that was sustained to Mr. Big Booty Jerry Jeudy. So, I don't know. It seems like maybe he'll be out not the whole season, but even longer than was projected. In New York up against the Giants, Tim Patrick went 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's for 39 receiving yards and 1 receiving tug, acquiring 13.9 PPR points, 11.9 half PPR points, and 9.9 standard points. A lot of people, they're going to clamor for KJ Hamler. That was some fucking raps like my name was Eminem right there. They're going to be talking up KJ Hamler, but I personally believe that Tim Patrick fits that role that Jeudy was in better than Hamler. I think Hamler is certainly a fine ad as well, but I personally would prefer to pick up Tim Patrick here this week up against these Jacksonville Jaguars. Is, as Borat would say, a very nice matchup for Mr. Tim Patrick. Next up, we got Jalen Reagor of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the San Francisco 49ers. In week 1, up against the Atlanta Falcons, Reagor went 6 for 6 for 49 yards and 1 touchdown, acquiring 16.9 PPR points, 13.9 half PPR points, and 10.9 standard points. This matchup up against the 49ers isn't amazing. But a lot of the time, when you're looking at the waiver wire, when you're adding a player, you're not necessarily looking to fire this guy in instantly into your lineup. You know, you can kind of ride it out a little bit. But here up against San Francisco, while it is a tough matchup on paper, Jared Goff sliced him up. He picked them apart, Fruit Ninja style. That's how he was slicing them up. He was nice with it. But obviously, Jared Goff isn't great. That was kind of a fluky game. But at the end of the day, I think Jalen Reagor as the clear wide receiver 2 there. Devontae Smith, to me, looked like the clear number 1, as I believed all offseason. I think Jalen Reagor is in a solid situation, especially if Hurts is able to continue to look that good. Now, he did it up against Atlanta, so that's not that hard to do, right? The Atlanta Falcons aren't necessarily this elite football team, this elite football defense, but he still showed me enough for me to be pretty happy with Jalen Reagor here, even in a tougher matchup up against the 49ers. Before we get on into the next wide receiver, I would like to let you guys know that we have a YouTube channel for sports betting too. If you love what we do here for DFS and what we are doing on the fantasy football YouTube channel here, you're going to want to subscribe to the Awesemo odds channel. You can find the link in the description of this video. So go ahead, subscribe now, turn the notification bell on, and enjoy what we have in store for sports betting. Next guy up here, we're going to be talking about Christian Kirk. And I'm going to tell you why you don't want to add Christian Kirk, but a lot of people, they're going to tell you to add Christian Kirk. And I want to just talk about him because I want to kind of go against the status quo. Talk about this man because this is a guy that is going to severely fuck you over when you pick him up. Christian Kirk does this every year. It's his trick. He does it every single year. He has these big games. People go to the waiver wire. They grab their cell phone. They run to the waiver wire. They're spamming the ad. They're sending all their fab the way of Christian Kirk. Would I be surprised if Christian Kirk has a great game up against the Minnesota Vikings now? But it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable because Christian Kirk has these big games. And then the man just, he goes to sleep. He dozes off for like 4 games. Then he has that big game again. And then guess what? He's in a fucking hibernation. He's in a cave like Winnie the goddamn Pooh. He's sleeping. He had too much honey. That's what happens with Christian Kirk. It happens every year. And every year, we fall for the same trick. Week 1 at Tennessee. 5 for 5 for 70 yards and 2 tugs. 2 tugs, acquiring 24 PPR points. 21.5 half PPR points. 19 standard points. A top 12 wide receiver in all formats. If that happens again, I'd be shocked. Now, could he do it again against Minnesota? Yes. But what happens 4 weeks from now when you look back? You're like, wow, Kirk had 2 good games. That's how it's going to be. Every year he does this. So look, you can add Christian Kirk. I'm fine with you adding him. But don't expect weekly that you can just throw him in there and he's going to look like how he played up against the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans got dismantled by the Arizona Cardinals. I personally just do not see that happening again. Well, it will happen again for Christian Kirk, but it'll be very sporadic on the season. Now on to the tight end section of the video. We begin with Jared Cook, tight end of the LA Chargers, going up against the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys defense, I should say, is as soft as baby shit. Jared Cook should have no problem going to Pound Town up against that Cowboys defense. We saw what Gronk did last week. Now, again, I don't think Jared Cook's going to put up those Gronk numbers, right? Because Gronk was one of the best tight ends on the week. Gronk absolutely eviscerated the defense. But Jared Cook looked pretty good, even up against a stout Washington football team defense, going 5 receptions on 8 targets for 57 receiving yards, giving him 10.6 PPR points, 8.1 half PPR points, and 5.6 standard points. So Jared Cook looked pretty solid in that game. And this game, he's getting the Cowboys. Far easier defense. I think Justin Herbert looked pretty good in that game up against the football team. I think he's going to continue on to have a great season this year, just like he did last year. So Jared Cook, I'm a big fan of in this matchup up against the Dallas Cowboys. Next up, we got Juwan Johnson of the New Orleans Saints going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. We just talked about Jared Cook. Jared Cook is the reason why now there could be a new in New Orleans, a new tight end in town. And it seems like Juwan Johnson is going to be the touchdown guy there. Versus Green Bay, he had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 21 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. In most fantasy leagues, it's hard to stream tight end. It really is. Because there's not a lot available every single week. Because a lot of people like to roster 2 tight ends. And it makes it even harder to find a guy off the waiver wire. So in a lot of leagues, Jared Cook is gone. And if you're down bad at the tight end position, Juwan Johnson is that upside shot. Sure, maybe he'll go from scoring 17.1 PPR points, 15.6 half PPR points, 14.1 standard points, to getting like 4 points. Because that's just what could happen. But if famous Jameis Winston is able to put the pedal to the metal in this game, if mono man Sam Darnold is able to fight back into this game, and it's a back and forth affair, then maybe Juwan Johnson sees a lot more receptions going up the field because, hey, Jameis Winston didn't throw the ball all that much on Sunday against the Packers because the Packers were just down by 1 million and they didn't have to do that. But if they play a team that can fight back into the game, then it gives Juwan Johnson a lot better opportunity to score. But before we get on into the final 2 tight ends, I would like to let you guys know that if you're looking for season-long fantasy football coverage, then we have you covered. Our NFL Weekly Express Pass is available now for only $3.95, and it is more expansive than ever, which includes our trade value tool, strength of schedule tool, fantasy streaming helper. With that, you will also get our NFL daily fantasy player and ownership rankings, access to our expert Slack chat, and everything we have to offer for NFL DFS showdown and single game contests. New this year is the projected ownership and optimal lineup probabilities for tier contests on DraftKings. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Final 2 tight ends here. Tyler Conklin of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Tyler Conklin, I honestly didn't think was all that good. Irv Smith gets hurt. Conklin elevated as the #1 guy there. Seems like he's the clear #1 there. Plays pretty well, 4 for 4, like he's at Wendy's up against the Cincinnati Bengals in that losing affair for 41 receiving yards. He had 8.1 PPR points, 6.1 half PPR points, and 4.1 standard points. Now, you might be nervous. Nick, did you see what Chandler Jones did to the Tennessee Titans? Did you see what happened? Chandler Jones ate Ryan Tannehill for breakfast. Won't he do the same thing to Kirk Cousins? Maybe. I don't think so, but hey, Tyler Conklin's basically free. You just add him, you throw him in there, and hope that they play much better than the Titans did on Sunday. Final player here, Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. For some reason, Jimmy Graham is still in town. For some reason, they didn't move him. But it is what it is because Kmet seems like he's the better option than Jimmy G at this point up against the LA Rams in LA on Sunday night. Cole Kmet had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 42 receiving yards, giving him 9.2 PPR points, 6.7 half PPR points, and 4.2 standard points. So, again, not ultra excited about Cole Kmet, but when you're scavenging through the waiver wire, if you're down tremendous at tight end, that's just kind of the chance you're going to have to take. And here up against Cincinnati, there could be a lot worse matchups for Mr. Cole Kmet. So thank you guys all so much for watching this video. If you wanted help with the running back position, check out Lofty's video from about an hour or 2 ago. I love you guys all so much. Thank you for watching. Let me know your favorite waiver wire ad for week number 2. I almost said week number 1. Week number 2 of the 2021 fantasy football season. I love you guys. As always, stay safe. Goodbye.